Chapter 1: The Hidden Key. Oliver had always been a curious boy, with a mind that wandered just as far as his feet. Living in a quiet village by the coast, he spent his days exploring trails that twisted through the woods, climbing hills, and searching for hidden spots that only he seemed to notice. His greatest love, though, was the beach, where the ocean's waves crashed against rocks, and treasures from the sea washed up on the shore. One bright morning, as Oliver wandered down the shore, he noticed something glinting just beneath the sand. Bending down, he brushed aside the grains and uncovered a small, rusty key half buried beneath a smooth rock. The key felt heavy and cool in his hand, despite its small size. Its iron was aged, weathered by the sea, and intricate engravings wound around its handle in a pattern he didn't recognize. Something about it felt mysterious, like it had been lost for a long time. "What could this be for?" he muttered to himself. He looked around, wondering if anyone else might have noticed it, but the beach was quiet, with only the sound of the waves. Clutching the key tightly, he tucked it safely into his pocket and began to walk back to the village, determined to uncover its story. As soon as he returned to the village, Oliver started knocking on doors. He went from house to house, asking if anyone had lost the key, hoping to find its owner. But no one claimed it. His neighbors, mostly older folks, shook their heads and dismissed him with a smile. Some thought it was just another of Oliver's wild adventures. After all, he had always been the village dreamer. Finally, Oliver arrived at the small house of Mr. Lewis, the village historian, who was also known as the oldest and wisest man around. Mr. Lewis had a library filled with dusty books, old maps, and artifacts from the village's history. He was known to have an answer to almost any question. Oliver eagerly showed him the key, explaining where he had found it, and how no one else seemed to recognize it. Mr. Lewis took the key, turning it over in his hands. His eyes, sharp with age and knowledge, widened with surprise. "This key! I haven't seen anything like it in decades," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "Oliver, this might be the key to the old lighthouse on the hill." Oliver's heart began to pound with excitement. The lighthouse had been closed for as long as he could remember, standing tall and silent on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. Its door was locked tight, its windows dusty and cracked from years of wind and rain. Local children often dared each other to go near it, but most only whispered about it from afar. Some said the lighthouse was haunted, and a few claimed they'd seen lights flickering inside on stormy nights. "There's a legend," continued Mr. Lewis, lowering his voice as if revealing a secret. "It's said that the lighthouse keeper, who lived there alone many years ago, hid something precious inside. Some think it was gold, others say it was a map or a rare book. No one really knows. But after he passed away, no one ever found the key, or whatever it was he kept locked inside." Oliver's curiosity blazed like a spark in dry wood. He knew he had to see the lighthouse for himself. Thanking Mr. Lewis, he left with the key clutched in his hand, and a growing plan in his mind. As he made his way back home, he began gathering supplies for his adventure. He packed a small flashlight, a notebook, and a pen, just in case he uncovered something worth recording. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, Oliver felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The key seemed to buzz in his pocket, urging him forward. His parents had no idea of his plans, and he didn't tell them. This was his adventure, his secret. When night finally fell, Oliver slipped out of his house and set off up the dark, winding path toward the lighthouse. The walk was longer than he remembered, and the air was cool and crisp, with a slight breeze stirring the trees. The path grew narrower and steeper as he climbed, and soon he could see the tall shape of the lighthouse silhouetted against the starlit sky. It stood alone on the cliff, silent and forgotten, watching over the sea like a lonely guardian. Finally, he reached the iron door, its surface covered in patches of rust and salt stains from years of sea spray. Taking a deep breath, he pulled the key from his pocket. The engravings glinted in the moonlight, casting strange shadows on his hand. With a steadying breath, he slid the key into the lock, feeling his heart pound as he turned it slowly. The door creaked, resisting at first, but then swung open with a groan. Inside, the air was cool and still. Dust danced in the light from his flashlight as he stepped over the threshold, feeling as if he'd entered another world, a place untouched by time, filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 2: The Secrets of the Lighthouse. The inside of the lighthouse was eerie and quiet, thick with layers of dust that had settled over the years. Oliver's flashlight cut through the darkness, casting strange shadows on the walls, where old, faded maps clung like remnants of a forgotten time. The air was cool, and the silence seemed to pulse with hidden secrets. Oliver's heart raced with both fear and excitement as he stepped carefully forward, trying not to disturb the stillness. The spiral staircase at the center of the room twisted upward, disappearing into darkness. At the base of the staircase, an old wooden desk stood against the wall, its drawers slightly ajar as if someone had left them in a hurry. Oliver opened one drawer, hoping to find a clue, and was rewarded with a handful of old yellowed papers. Most of them were covered in strange handwriting he couldn't quite make out, but one sheet had a sketch of the lighthouse, along with a set of symbols he didn't recognize. Turning the paper over, he found a note written in a shaky hand. "The light reveals all." He whispered the words to himself, trying to make sense of them. What could it mean? Was it a clue, or just the ramblings of the old lighthouse keeper? He stuffed the paper into his pocket, determined to figure it out. With a deep breath, Oliver began to climb the winding staircase, his steps echoing off the stone walls. Each step felt heavier as he got closer to the top, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone, that somehow, the lighthouse was watching him. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, but when he turned, there was nothing but the empty, winding stairs behind him. Finally, he reached the top floor, where a large lantern sat in the center of the room. The glass was cracked and cloudy, and the metal base was covered in rust, but it still looked sturdy. Oliver felt an odd sense of reverence as he approached it, almost as if he was intruding on something sacred. He wondered if this lantern had been the one used to guide sailors home, casting its beam out over the dark waves. His gaze drifted across the room and landed on a small chest tucked into the corner. It was locked, and the keyhole looked just the right size for the key he'd found on the beach. Heart pounding, he took the key from his pocket and knelt down beside the chest. The lock clicked open with a soft metallic sound, and Oliver lifted the lid slowly, feeling a thrill of anticipation. Inside, wrapped in a piece of old cloth, was a small journal, its leather cover worn and faded. The lighthouse keeper's journal, Oliver thought, his fingers trembling as he lifted it out. He flipped through the pages, each one filled with scrawled notes, sketches, and maps of the coastline. Some entries detailed storms that had battered the shore, while others mentioned lost ships and strange occurrences at sea. One entry caught his eye. May 12th. The storm was fierce last night. I saw a ship, struggling in the waves, its sails torn and flapping. I lit the lantern to guide them, but they never came ashore. There was a flash, a strange light just before they vanished. I cannot explain it. Oliver's curiosity deepened. The lighthouse keeper's notes grew more mysterious with each page, describing strange lights at sea, whispers in the night, and sightings of a shadowy figure near the shore. The final entry was short and barely readable. June 10th. I must protect it. They mustn't find it. The light holds the key. Oliver sat back, his mind racing. What could the lighthouse keeper have been protecting? His thoughts drifted back to the note he'd found earlier. The light reveals all. Maybe it was a clue, a hint that something would happen if he turned on the old lantern. Determined to find out, he moved to the lantern and examined it carefully. He found a small handle near the base and turned it, hoping it would still work after all these years. To his surprise, the lantern sputtered, and a faint glow began to build within it, flickering as if struggling to reignite. The light grew stronger, casting a soft beam that illuminated the room. As the light brightened, something unexpected happened. The shadows on the wall shifted, forming shapes and patterns that looked like symbols, the same symbols he'd seen on the paper. He followed the beam's path, and it landed on the wall opposite the lantern, illuminating a hidden door that had been completely invisible in the darkness. Oliver's heart pounded as he approached the door, his mind spinning with wonder and excitement. This was it, the hidden secret of the lighthouse, just as the old keeper had written in his journal. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the door handle, ready to uncover whatever lay behind it. What mysteries did this hidden room hold? Would he find the lighthouse keeper's secret, or perhaps something even more extraordinary? His hand tightened on the handle, and with a gentle push, the door creaked open into darkness.